Hi, I'm Sidney Nakahodo, founder and general partner of Seldor Capital. Welcome to our Seldor Investment Series inaugural event. Before I introduce our guest, I would like to say a few words about our firm. We are a VC fund based out of New York City. We invest primarily in US space tech startups at the pre-seed and seed stages. Our goal is to support space businesses as they create humanity's path to the stars while positively impacting life on Earth and beyond. Our main differentiator is that we have specialists not only with expertise in space, but also broad business, finance, technology, and international development experience. We are supported by world-class advisors comprised of successful founders and experienced VCs. Let me tell you how we got started. We joined VC Lab, an accelerator for new funds at Silicon Valley, in August 2020. This is a very selective program that received more than 1,000 applications, and after rigorous scrutiny and training, helped launch a small contingent of new funds. The top graduates of the program were invited to present at the Venture Forum. We were one of them, officially introducing Seldor Capital to the world December 2020. Since then, things have moved very fast. We secured our initial LPs in March of 2021 and made our first investments in April of last year. By December, we already had 8 companies in our portfolio. We are already expecting to invest in 2 new companies before the end of this summer. Here is a sneak peek of our portfolio. With the Seldor Investment Series, we'll be highlighting some of the most promising space startups. All our companies are already at the revenue stage or have contracts with paying customers. I should also mention that we are proud that half of the startups we've invested in have women as founders or co-founders. The founders in our portfolio companies are following the footsteps of Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Paul Allen, and Richard Branson. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs over our time also founded space companies driven by passion and also by the incredible opportunities that the space sector is creating. Entrepreneurs like Chris Stott, founder and CEO of Lonestar Data Holdings, a Seldor Capital portfolio company. Chris is one of the most knowledgeable business professionals in the entire space ecosystem. Besides leading Lonestar, Chris plays an active role in several space companies and advocacy groups. He is also the executive chairman of Manset, a company that he helped found. He's on the advisory board and faculty member of the International Space University. He is also chair emeritus of the Space and Satellites Professionals International, a great group that advocates for space professionals. He's the founding director of the International Institute of Space Commerce. And previously, he occupied very important positions as a faculty member of Singularity University. He was also a director of international commercialization at Lockheed Martin Space Operations. He worked in business development at the Delta Launch Vehicle program at Boeing, among other credentials. Chris is not only someone who's qualified as an entrepreneur, but somebody who deeply knows business and the entire space ecosystem.
For filling in then. Sidney, thank you everyone for having me today. I'm actually just came out of a rocket factory here at Virgin Orbit, and we had to switch phones and all sorts of stuff for other reasons. But here in lovely, sunny California, and really enjoying this. So thank you very much.
The idea here today is to have a very informal conversation, right? This is an opportunity for our audience that includes investors, but also enthusiasts about space, to get to know you as much as to get to know what Lonestar is doing. What you used to do before you got involved in space?
Before space, I just dreamt of space. I don't actually remember a time when I didn't love space. Literally, I was out here in LA and at these meetings, and someone's asked me a similar question, and I was able to tell them I used to fight my family on a Saturday afternoon because there were 3 channels. One had soccer on it and the other had Star Trek. And I am still a pariah in my family for not liking soccer. I've loved space my whole life. I've never wanted to do anything but.
But when did you get involved in space?
Yeah, because I was one of those children growing up that loved space, but maybe wasn't so good at math. And in the British education system, I'm now an American citizen, very proudly, but in the British system, they'd silo you. So I spent a lot of time in social sciences and the arts, law, politics, and other things, but always loving space. And attending the International Space University, I did their first master's in 1995. And ironically, I'm actually here. Peter Diamandis, I turned the camera, but he's actually waving through me at the door, laughing that I couldn't get on Zoom. Thank you, Peter. Peter was great about that. And so, but the idea that an ISU opened doors to me because it made me realize that space isn't just engineering and science. It's so much more than that. It is politics. It is regulatory. It's business. It's a $440 billion business a year. And that you need all these different teams and crafts and experiences and skill sets. And that's what allowed me to come into space. ISU opened all these doors to me. It was tremendous.
You stay involved with ISU for many years, right?
Yeah, still on their board of advisors. I was on the main board for about 15 years. It was a privilege to serve on the executive committee for about 10. I know, whoop-de-doo, right? But it was great because it allows you to put something back. And that's a core tenet of what we do at Lonestar. And it's always been a core tenet at all of our companies, is that it's great to live in this wonderful world that we have. But unless you're, well, as my wife, Nicole, says, it's better to be a crewmate, not a passenger, right? You've got to do, you be the change you want to see in the world. And one of my old bosses, you mentioned George W. and George H.W. Bush, they always used to say, Chris, leave the world a better place than when you found it. And being able to serve at ISU to help other students come in, and the university's grown tremendously. It's now the largest single alumni base in the entire global space industry. It's a fantastic institution. And if you're thinking about it, do it. Lots of different courses. The education's great. When I came out with the Master in Space Science, my eyes bled, right? I mean, I had to learn calculus and it was like, oh my goodness. But really it was the network. It was the ability to talk to people in different industries, different agencies, all over the world, and have an instant self-selected switch to be able to go in there and teach. So Mark Matosian, Dr. Mark Matosian, our Chief Operating Officer, is an ISU grad. Carol Goldstein, you just talked to, teaches at ISU, teaches satellite finance at ISU. And yeah, it's like being the one-eyed man in the kingdom of the blind. It's an old expression. And it means that, you're there. Why can't the other people see these connections? Why can't they see it? You just pick up the phone and talk to this person and you're able to do business. And that's what ISU brought us. So that was it. Sorry, long-winded answer, but ISU's been tremendous.
No, perfect. And just for those of you who might not know, Chris' wife, Nicole Stott, astronaut. So talking about space, right? Space is something that is, I imagine, that is part of not only of your professional activities, but something that you also continue to discuss off hours.
Very much so. She's actually traveling with me out here at the moment. She's doing something else here in Los Angeles with the X Prize Foundation. I get to tag along, and at the same time, go to places like which way the camera, Virgin Orbit. If you can see the rockets behind me. And we were down at SpaceX this morning, and we just left relativity space, and we're headed into spin launch after this as well. And it's all about relationships. It's all about talking to the very best providers of services. So in Lonestar, we're a service company. And think of us like a satellite operator, like an airline, but our focus is data. But we have to get to the moon. We need proper equipment providers, launches, and everything else. So here, maintaining relationships, having discussions, making sure we're good. Our first 2 missions are booked, of course, with SpaceX, as we went there first this morning. They were wonderful, but that's always good to see the teams here.
You've worked in legacy space companies. You've seen the development of new space, all those years that you've been associated with space, right? And can you share with us how those developments have fueled your interest in doing your own companies?
I was, like you said, I was very lucky. I started off at McDonnell Douglas and Boeing, and I was coming out of ISU. And a gentleman called Jay Honeycutt arranged me to meet a guy called Lyle Holloway, who sat me down and said, I hear you're looking for something in launch. And I was like, oh my goodness, right? Always mentorship is the most amazing thing. And I came to work at McDonnell Douglas, working British American military programs and on launch. My first mission was something for a program called Skynet. And it was eye-opening. I mean, you saw the breadth and depth of these incredible legacy companies. Like McDonnell Douglas, we were bought by Boeing, we merged. And the Delta launch vehicle program still held records. It was tremendous. The Delta II, Delta IV, amazing people to work with. Actually, a lot of the people I'm here to see today at Virgin Orbit I was a very junior colleague. Let's make that clear. I was someone in the cubes, and they all had offices on the wall because they were like rock stars. And Jim Simpson and Dan Hart and his crew, who are now here running Virgin Orbit. Small industry, right? I mean, good people. And then I was very lucky when Nicole was at NASA, and she just missed in '98, but they asked her to come fly in the shuttle training aircraft. So we moved to Houston. And you don't sell many rocket engines in Houston or rocket launches. So Boeing let me retire. And again, an example of how the industry, solid, looks after everybody. It's all about the people and these great programs. And I actually went to work for Lockheed Martin Space Operations. Part of my portfolio was looking after the Deep Space Network, looking after TDRS satellites, helping a team that put dishes around the world for satellite communications. And again, it was a different side, because now I went from commercial launch vehicles into government telecoms. It was a CSOC, Consolidated Space Operations contract. Say that 3 times very quickly. But a great team of people. And I was doing this, though, I always had that itch, because I'd be out talking to customers, and especially on the launch vehicle side, and coming out of ISU, and I was like, well, why won't you buy my launch vehicle? It's only, only 8.5 million, so many millions of dollars, I won't say, but so many millions for 8.5 minutes worth of work. Come on, buy my launch vehicle, make my day. The customers were great, and they look at me and they say, well, Chris, we'd love to, but we don't have our financing. And I'm like, oh, why don't you have your financing? And they say, well, we don't have our spectrum. Oh, why don't you have your spectrum? And they started to tell me. And I was going, well, wait a minute. This is my first entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur in space before it was trendy. And the entrepreneurs today have amazing amounts of tools and support from people just like Seldor. And you guys have been amazing for us too at Lonestar. Thank you. Everyone, I would highly recommend Seldor. They're an amazing group. And we started a company to help people find spectrum. And we did that through the art of man. He found a niche, customer demand, and a niche, and pursued it. And so my other company, I'm just chairman at the moment, non-exec chair, great team running that. Strange to let go of your baby, but handed it over to Catherine Kaczynski, Rachel Beatty, and Jennifer Stone, and Alexis Martin. They're running it now, doing amazing things with it. So I could do Lonestar. But it's always customers. One thing we were taught in sales at McDonnell Douglas, it was a great company. I mean, I hope I have it almost tattooed on my heart from my whole life, because they're the ones that gave me my break. They're the ones that let me into the industry. Thanks to the people at Kennedy Space Center and Honeycutt and ISU and everyone else. It was amazing. And they always said, if you're in sales, number one thing you can do in sales is simply this. Yeah, just listen. The customers tell you what they need. That's all that. And that's the most amazing thing. And that kind of maybe brings us into Lonestar, because we're customer driven. Customers always say what they want. It's the most wonderful thing. I love customers. Sorry. Because you meet their demand, you meet their needs. And so we're not like pushing a tech, but you listen to the customers. And so one of those psychology things, Sydney, and I love it. People really don't like to say no. They feel really bad about saying no in any society on the planet, right? And so when you say, would you like to buy my rocket? And they go, oh, no, but I need this. They'll always give you the alternative. And most people in sales will shut off when they say the word no. The air goes out of their balloon. They're like, oh, and they miss the next crucial 20 seconds, which is when the customer tells you what they do need. And so that entrepreneur, it's being in the heart of Lockheed and Boeing, amazing people, but then realizing that there was a niche I could go after. And I had to go form a company. I had to do this. And I had to have that freedom to make my own decisions. I had to have that freedom to meet customer demand and grow it out. And today, Mansat is the world's largest commercial provider of satellite spectrum, which is wonderful. And some of the companies I'm out here seeing today, it's strange. I come in and they say, Chris, are you here? And I'm like, no, I'm here from Lonestar today. And they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah. We came out of Stealth last week, and they're like, oh, that was you. I'm like, yes, let's do some business. Tell me what you need.
Coming out of Stealth, there was a very exciting article on Space News, a great article. So, Chris, why did you leave a successful business to jump into something totally unknown?
Customers again. I have that itch. When a customer says they need something, what is it? I've been called a pleaser. But I'm like, I'm pleased with a mission, right? When someone says I need help, we're there to give help. And I saw this opportunity. And I looked at Mansat and said, okay, this is a mature company now. Someone else needs to be running it so that it can grow with new ideas and fresh people. And I need to take a step back. And that's, and that allowed me to go to Lonestar because I just found it fascinating. I mean, easy to say, but look at my track record. I also have a passion, not just for space, but also for environmentalism and the biosphere. And, this is our planet, this beautiful blue marble, right? And the more I learned from our customers about what was happening with data centers on the ground, the moratoriums, the loss of data. Hey, look, I'm a big sci-fi fan too. I read a lot of science fiction. And, and what we're discussing goes back to what was discussed in the second Blade Runner movie. I know it's strange to talk about these things, but look, sci-fi writers make a good living by thinking about the future. And they talked about something there called the blackout, which is when humanity lost all of its data and was just a terrible event. And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, that's a horrible science fiction thing. And then I read this book by Nicole Perlroth called This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends. And it's just as I was speaking to our data customers. And it is a terrifying book. Read it. I mean, really read it. Have a Valium maybe before you read this book. And it was published last year, New York Times journalist Nicole Perlroth. And it is fundamentally terrifying on how much we rely upon data, but how fragile data is from cyber attack, nation state action, fire, floods, tsunami, worse. And it is really eye-popping. And so when I was talking to our customers, I was able to reflect that back to them. And that was like, okay, we've got to do this. I will take that leap of faith. I will literally jump off the cliff and go do something that everyone says, what? Data centers on the moon? Smart devices on the moon? Are you mad? And I'm like, no, customers are asking me to do it. So the market's there. It's a new idea. And I understand for some, I mean, Seldor have been amazing and your LPs have been tremendous too. Thank you so very, very much. And so, because having faith in our vision and because it means a lot, because we have our customers saying, let's do this. You guys saw it almost instantly and thank you. But we have a couple of conversations and people are like, what are you talking about? Why would you do this? And it was at one of the meetings this morning, someone said, look, the only thing that matters is physics and the market. If the market needs it, go for it. And if you can work the physics, make it happen. There are hundreds of millions, if not billions of naysayers. A broken clock is a broken clock is right twice a day. What we call professionally negative people. Look, if I want to find out what I can't do in life, just stop and ask anyone. And I'll tell you. But the only limitations are the ones we place upon ourselves. And so talking to our customers, working with them, allowing them to really trigger into this. And the more we talked to them, got their requirements, reflected it back, said, okay, we can do this different ways. We looked at all the different options and we ended up looking at the moon. And it ended up being the most counterintuitive, right? If it was easy, everyone would do it. The most cost-effective way of protecting this data on the Earth. And then something wonderful started to happen. I can tell you that our first mission is now at capacity, which is great. Hopefully within about a week from now, our second mission will be sold out too. So when people say, oh, you're crazy. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I might be crazy, but customers are buying, It's like having a food truck and I'm selling some strange fusion cuisine that's very spicy. And he goes, oh, no one will want that. And they got a line down the block. We've really hit on something. It's like a lightning rod in the zeitgeist. And the same thing on Lunar Cloud as well, which has been absolutely tremendous. For us, that was a pivotal moment because we thought we were working a product. I'm sorry, I know I've gone a little bit off script, Cindy, but so we thought we were working a product to a terrestrial market, leveraging Earth's largest satellite, the moon, and the ability to do disaster recovery as a service, smart storage as a service with customers. Absolutely, yes. And then we started getting interesting phone calls, even though we were in stealth. And I'd be like, how do you know about us? And they said, oh, but we hear you have storage. Do you have functional microchips? Well, yes. Are you running Linux? Why, yes, we are. Can we please run the following apps with you? Can we do true edge of network processing on the moon with you? Because of that gap between the Earth and the moon. Look, that latency, that gap for us, that 400,000 kilometers of vacuum gapped security and more, wonderful for our terrestrial customers. But for lunar edge, oh, we love it. And so that's what we've been focusing on as well. We've taken what we thought was a product and now turned it into a platform. And we're at the point where, and I imagine they're watching, hi team, where they're like, oh my gosh, please, no more customers for a while because we're kind of full. And I'm like, yes, this is great. Let's go, go, go. We love it. It's wonderful. I mean, and for us, it's the greatest validation we can ever have is when a customer says, thank you. I'm like, yes, wonderful. So we've started with customers and then found the technology to meet the customer to meet the customer needs and demands.
Now that's perfect, right? So you start with a problem and then you create a solution to address that problem, and not the other way around, right? Something that we see quite often in the space sector and in deep tech. But Chris, so let's step back a little bit. And when you talk about data centers on the moon, that's just sounds like science fiction, right? At the same time, we're less than 12 months away from actually seeing data centers on the moon. Right?
Yes.
Just to give a little bit of tangibility to our audience here, what kinds of customers are potential users or paying customers, so to say, right now for Lonestar?
Fortune 500s, FTSE 100s, national governments, and state governments at the moment. Some of our so think of us like Men in Black meet Swiss bankers. And Sydney, with our greatest respect, with our NDAs with our customers, and that's one of the reasons we came out of stealth was one of our customers asked us to. So then they, in the next few weeks, can publicize what they're doing with us. Otherwise, audience, I know it's shocking. We would have, ideally, I only wanted people to find out about us after we were operational on the lunar surface, right? I mean, because we have, it's amazing backers like Seldor and customer base and getting a technology built by SkyCorp, fantastic group of people out in Santa Clara, very responsive, knew exactly what we wanted to do because we looked at buy versus build. Did we want to sort of build this ourselves? And then COVID happened. And then our business model went, wait a minute, we need to be like a satellite operator. We need to buy the satellite, buy the hardware and operate it, right? Our specialty is our customers, it's the service. So SkyCorp have been brilliant. Intuitive Machines, who we're flying with, have been absolutely tremendous as well. And that's key for us. So we looked at, I don't know if I've deviated, forgive me, always bring me back on topic because I've been like on my third or fourth Coca-Cola to try and get powered up for this. Not an advertisement for Coca-Cola, but Coca-Cola is a wonderful drink and I would highly recommend that. Right, so Intuitive Machines have been brilliant on this because we looked at, for our customers, they just said to us, I mean, this happened at a conference called the TED conference, TED, Technology Entertainment Design, back in 2018. Sitting there having a cup of coffee and a shadow kind of fell across the table. I looked up and there were three wonderful gentlemen that we know who said, Chris, you're something to do with space. Can you help us get our data out of the biosphere? We're incredibly worried about the carbon impact, the heating impact, the security of it, the data intercept, data sovereignty. And I was like, customers said something. I'm like, yes. Now tell me what I said yes to, please. And so we started to look. So we looked at low Earth orbit, fantastic environment for hot data. Starlink, Lightspeed, OneWeb, and others are doing that. Like distributed data centers in the sky for transactional data. It's great. But for us, we're looking after customers' data. It's like data. In the Cold War, every time we put something on a satellite we didn't want to land in the wrong country, it accidentally did. And so I learned a lot from that. And crowding, debris, spectrum congestion, jamming, that's comms. Well, let them do that. But for global coverage. So we took a step back and looked at geo. We looked at the cost of geo, 3 satellites, life cycle cost, global coverage again. How do we do that? We said, well, then how do we grow out from Moore's law? And so we're talking to our customers the whole time. So how do we handle this for you? And then CLPS happened, Commercial Lunar Payload Services. Thank you, NASA, right? They created a marketplace. It's amazing. So this is, I know you showed the video. It's fantastic. This precursor to Artemis, a $2 billion program, where NASA's a commercial customer. It grew out of the Google Lunar X Prize, right? I mean, it was an amazing thing. And so NASA takes 77% of the cargo capacity. So it's like a FedEx, and they take 2/3 of the plane, a bit more. And the 23% is left for commercial, us. And so we were like, wow, you have comms and power. And by the way, we have our own spectrum, of course, moving forward. So we can actually beef up that broadband link to the moon. It was fun. We did the math, and we're satellite people. Mark, Carol, myself, Del, we've all been in the satellite communications industry, each about 25 to 30 years, each, right? And we took a hard look at satellites. And they're wonderful. We love them. But then Earth's largest satellite crept into the picture, and we found out it was more cost effective. It's actually cheaper for us to do this from the moon and get global coverage than it is for us to do a low Earth orbit constellation or geocomms. And we couldn't do it without CLPS, right? And it's our firm intention to actually buy more capacity moving forward. I think there's 14 people in the pool for CLPS. 4 of them have got missions already. It's Intuitive Machines, Astrobotic, Mast, and Firefly, and it's growing out. There's 130 missions to the moon planned in the next 10 years. I mean, the US alone putting $94 billion into this. And very analogous to the early days of satellite communications. Very. Telstar 1 was the first ever comms satellite, commercial satellite doing communications. It was launched in 1962, right? I mean, that's, it's not long after Sputnik and Gagarin, and that's way before we started, Mercury, but Gemini, Apollo, and going to the moon. And everyone's like, wow, you're doing ComSats? I'm like, yeah, it's just basically putting a ComSat on the moon, Earth's largest satellite. It sits there. It's great. We know exactly where it is. Right? Sorry, I can go on for hours on this stuff. I find it,
perfect.
But it's very analogous. Yeah.
Absolutely, Chris. And actually, that's a good point for our next question. Why suddenly there's so much interest in the moon, right? Both from governments, from corporations?
No, well, finally, right? Something that we've known in the community for many, many, many years. That's like the Rock of Gibraltar in the sky. Whoever controls the moon controls the Earth. Every orbit is determined from that moon. You can clear the skies with anything from there. But also look at the moon as a fully stocked space station. It has all the raw materials, everything you need, a stable platform, no atmosphere, no weather, and it's Earth's largest satellite. And the whole world rotates underneath every 24 hours. I think it's a great question. I think it was a generational shift. We talk about being orphans of Apollo. Fantastic documentary there by Michael Potter, who's on our board. Award-winning documentary, definitely watch. And it's about, then we had Apollo, we were ready to go back, and then it stopped. And then, rightly, they went back to von Braun's plan, and they started building up low Earth orbit with shuttle and station and other things. And moon kind of got lost in the shuffle. There was a focus on Mars, quite right too, right? And that was, with robotic landings and everything else, giving us actually, ironically, a lot of the tech we're using now to go back to the moon, like RTGs and rovers and landers and other things. And so there was this generational gap. And now comes our generation. But ironically, not when I say our, I mean us in the free nations of the world. And please understand there is a firm division at the moment. There are those who are free and those who aren't. Sadly, it's Cold War 2.0. And we see China and Russia doing things together, sadly. Yeah, sue me, right? This is about freedom, and it's about entrepreneurialism, and it's about doing the right thing, and it's about damn time we got back to the moon. And when you go up there legally, it's first come, first served. The Chinese have been active for 1,100 days on the South Lunar Pole, claiming territory. Well, bless their hearts. About to have some competition. About time too. Sorry. I have a chip. I'm psychologically balanced on that one. I have a chip on both shoulders. You just can't see it because of the camera.
No, it totally makes sense, because it gives us some background on why things are moving so fast and why there's so much excitement. So can you tell us about the roadmap? How are you going to make Lonestar into a billion-dollar company?
Absolutely. How are we going to scale? Definitely. So there's two ways we're going to do that. But focus on customers, focus on the market, making sure that we meet customer needs and demands. And the great thing is with what we're doing with satellite. So if you take the satellite analogy, transponders relate to storage. A transponder is like a petabyte of storage. We can pre-sell capacity, which is what we're actively doing now. So we can actually grow with market demand and grow into the marketplace. At the same time, it's going through all of these stages of the CLIPS missions, looking at what's coming after CLIPS, looking at Starship and more, and then eventually going from the surface to get down into lava tubes, and it allows us to scale our vision. Well, our vision is to go from terabytes to petabytes to exabyte to zettabyte level facilities to match data growth here on Earth. And at the same time, the vision is, see, the thing is, sometimes the team is like, Chris, you keep too much in your head. And I try and get it down on paper. But every time I look at the moon, I don't see the moon. I see a living, breathing storage space for the entire planet that isn't affected by climate change, that isn't affected by war, that isn't affected by fire, flood, tsunami, or worse. And it's the most logical, natural place for us to store things. I mean, even with latency, it's a 3-second round trip. And people are, oh, Chris, moon latency. And I'm like, 1, 2, 3. We just sent a signal to the moon, processed it, and it came back, right? I mean, I've movies on Netflix that download slower than that. And so the idea being that it's purposely put there, it's full of resources. There's so much more we can do. And we have more plans beyond that, but our focus right now is data. Meet the customer demand and scale up. And the sooner we can get equipment up there, the sooner we can make that equipment pay for itself and keep going and going and going. Like I said, our first mission is sold out. Our second mission is like, yay, close to selling out. I keep checking my emails all morning. I said yes yet. I said yes yet. And this is the most amazing thing, because people are starting to realize too, right? So we're heading into climate change. It's already getting bad, and sadly, it is going to get worse until we make it better. Of course, climate change is solvable, right? It's like all those wonderful people in the Cold War said, oh, we should all just give up. No, you solve it. We have the tools, we have the tech. Finally, space and satellite, remote sensing, Earth observation finally gives us the tools to measure so we can affect change. But as we're doing that, we want to be able to process that valuable, precious data, not in the middle of the fires and hurricanes and cyclones and tsunamis and all the problems, right? Because, where does most of the human population live? Near water. Where do we be putting our edge of network data centers? Near the population. What's rising? Water. Maybe, crazy idea, we need to do the processing offsite and somewhere a safe haven to do this from. Not only to store the Earth's data, and I'm talking like living, breathing data. You have hot, warm, and cold. We're like a new version of cold. It's smart storage as a service is a part of the industry we're working with, and disaster recovery as a service. The idea being that, yes, your regulated data, your premium data, your mission critical data, you need to store that for regulatory reasons, but printing it on paper, well, put it this way, killing a tree, skinning it, bleaching it, shredding its skin, putting ink on it and sticking it in a cardboard box and stuffing it under a mountain or on a piece of electric tape is no longer a viable form of storage. You need to be doing this in a far more dynamic way. We've been working with one of our partner companies, Valkyrie, out of Austin, Texas, on using graphical knowledge databasing. It's not even an exponential increase in search and storage. It is like going from a horse-drawn cart to a warp engine increase. And that allows us to then faster process bigger data. Use of space-qualified SSD, use of space-qualified chips, and a revolution in that too, for our Lunar Cloud services and our storage as well. And so the demand is there, and every single day there's more demand. It is the most wonderful thing. Data, they say, is like the new oil, or data is the greatest currency that the human race has ever created. It's also the only thing that humans want more of, faster, all the time. Oh, and by the way, so do machines, right? I mean, the new iPhone came out with what, a terabyte on it? The iPhone 14 is apparently alleged to have 2 terabytes on it. You have a self-driving car, Tesla, it's a petabyte a day. The Hubble, petabyte a month. You've got the James Webb Telescope, has a 14 petabyte stack on it. Oh my goodness gracious me. Right? I mean, we just set up some meetings yesterday at JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And they were telling us about how one mission they're about to launch actually draws down more data than every other mission combined in NASA history. And they're starting to go, oh, we don't have enough on-site storage. We have to go to the cloud. And then, well, then where's your backup for the cloud? And they went, oh. I'm like, yeah. What's your mission critical data? What's your premium data? You know, the stuff that you can't really afford to lose. Look, data is fragile, but it's agile. You know, unlike gold, you can only keep gold in one place. Data you should keep in more than one place, right?
Right.
You back up your iPhones, yes. So in case you lose your iPhone, you haven't lost your data. Well, it's just like backing up the critical data for the whole planet.
And Chris, I think that the narrative is very compelling, and we know that the devil's on the details. Right?
Of course,
so
yes.
What are the biggest challenges that you foresee to execute your vision?
No, absolutely. Well, the biggest challenges for us is keeping pace with storage technology, because that's increasing a lot. Maybe not on a Moore's law scale, but it's increasing, and that's important for us to keep an eye on. So we match into that. You know, lunar night survival too. That's a big critical thing for us, and as it is for everybody going to the moon. And this is, you know, the moon, 2 weeks of daylight, 2 weeks of darkness. During that darkness, it gets very cold, and we need to be able to survive that. There's various strategies with batteries, with RTGs, with all sorts of different things to do there. Fortunately, many people are working to solve that. Now, we solved that during the Apollo program. The Chinese are doing it now, 1,100 days of continuous operations. The Russians and Soviets did it during Lunar and Lunar Economy. And so when we talk to the people working on this, we're like, come on, we're Americans. American entrepreneurship, American ingenuity. We did this, our grandparents did this. Come on. So let's do it. And so we understand that NASA, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, and others, public domain, you can Google that, are working on amazing solutions to this. Not just to survive the lunar night, but to thrive during it. And the various CLIPS providers are working on that as well. And so it's a technical challenge, but here's the wonderful thing. As an integrator, we have an entire army of people, of entrepreneurs, of established providers of energy, batteries, and more, all pushing solutions on this. And the same thing with capacity to go to the moon. Look, Sydney, 5 years ago, we couldn't have done this. 2 years ago, we couldn't have done this. It's only because of NASA CLIPS that we can now do this. Because if we had to go design a lunar lander and design the rocket and set up all the ground control, oh my gosh, there's no way we could do this. So it's only because technology is advanced and the services are there. So for example, our ground network, we can go to existing established satellite operators for their teleports. We designed our spectrum to do that. For launch, Intuitive Machines, it comes with the price. We're flying on Falcon 9s. Yes, right? I mean, this is this revolution of what's happening. Is the cost of access has come down so much. The level of competition is there. There's now multiple providers, there's marketplaces, and it's changing what we can do in space. So if I went back to my 20-something-year-old person when I joined McDonnell Douglas and said, we're going to do this, what do you think? We would have taken a whiteboard and just scratched red all over it and gone, oh my gosh, how do we do any of this? But today, in the beginning of the third decade of the 21st century, wow, we can do this and more. And when there's more robotics on the moon, when there's more 3D printing, we can do some really amazing things. And that's other plans that we have. But it's, you know, and this is the, I hope this is coming across. This is the joy of doing this, right? I mean, it's ever since I made this decision to do this, I don't know. It's just like a weight off my shoulders that have been on my shoulders for 50 years. You know, it's get this done. You know, you only have one life. What are you going to do? How are you going to turn around to your children and grandchildren and say, so granddad, what did you do? You know, to help climate change? What did you do? Right? And I'm like, this. Oh, by the way, did you back up your phone to the Marius Hills yet? Come on, young man, back your phone up. Right? I mean, this is an epoch changing moment for the human race. I mean, I wish you guys could have seen what we saw today at SpaceX and relativity. We're seeing here at Virgin Orbit, and we'll go off to spin launch after this. And my jaw is hitting the ground. I mean, I'm an old Delta II guy, and we were good at Delta II. I mean, we were the best. And I'm looking around and going, wow, I had no idea how much launch capacity there is, how the prices are changing. I mean, this is an epoch-changing moment. And then the idea that we can actually utilize the moon, Earth's largest satellite, to do some fundamental good for our planet and for our species, and a very healthy business. Hey, this is capitalism in writ large in a great way, in a way where we're actually saving the biosphere. And at Lonestar, we are passionate about being not just carbon neutral, but carbon negative. And that's one of the interesting things, is that the classic costs of maintaining data centers down here are almost reversed. Yeah, an exabyte facility or zettabyte facility, capital costs are probably going to be roughly the same. But different costs. You know, we don't have to buy land, but we have to buy launch. And there's lots of other things like that. However, operational, OpEx, things that are a problem down here on Earth with electronics and heat, we like heat. Heat's our friend. It keeps us warm in space. So our OpEx is fundamentally different. The cost of communication, we have our own spectrum filings at the ITU, and we'll build those out. And will we go optical at some point? Of course we will, right? I mean, it's all good. I'm there. Someone sent me an email. I'm like, get off the screen. I'm like, sorry, I don't know what you guys can see or not. So, no,
Chris.
Yes, sorry, Sydney, go ahead.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, we have 5 minutes more. So the idea here is not to exhaust the discussion, but to stimulate people's imagination, right? And hopefully get some of the members of the audience to get involved somehow. So what final message would you like to share with potential investors that are thinking about, okay, space is creating all these opportunities, but I'm thinking about it vis-a-vis other sectors. Like, why should people think about investing in space?
Many different reasons. Number one is it's the beginning of the revolution. This is like the beginning of the industrial era. This is like the beginning of railroads, of steam engines and more. Right now is the time to do it. Right. I mean, this is an amazing time. But also, you're investing fundamentally in the future of the human race. You're investing in a positive way. You crest the cuirass. This is a virtuous circle. You know, you're not investing in building a coal plant that's going to poison your grandchildren. You're investing in the solution to that. And that's the great thing. This is like philanthropic investment. I mean, it's very hard to go wrong in space, because everything you're doing is fundamentally improving the lives of every man, woman, and child on this planet. And if you have any doubts about that, please come talk to us. And we will happily point you to and introduce you to a ton of Nobel laureates who'll just sit there and plead with you. More space, please, right? From environmentalists to people looking at new power solutions, space-based solar power using lunar materials, to people protecting every piece of data that we have on this planet. As we say, saving Earth's data 1 byte at a time. But now, I mean, please also invest in medical tech and IT and other things, because space is the culmination of all of that. You know, space is the hardest thing the human race has ever done. You know, we shouldn't be able to do what we're doing. Okay. I mean, it's like, you know, it's like a little over 100 years since we did the first powered flight. 112 years, right? Like, what? If you look at the exponential change in society and what's happening, the impact of the abundance that we're facing, and we're moving from a scarcity economy to an abundant economy. And that abundance, in great part, comes from access to the energy and resources of space. Those resources aren't just physical resources that we think, but it's the idea of time and space to actually take a breather as a race, to mature as a race, to have actually solar energy 24 hours a day, carbon free, to actually communications for the entire planet, to finally be able to measure climate change in the entire planet and solve this, right? We can do all of this because we can do it through space. And the moon is a wonderful place to do business. It's a stepping stone. We call it the new lunar economy. because we see a future whereby we have our data centers, our smart devices, put it that way. Our lunar cloud becomes a Mars cloud, becomes the, you name the moon of Jupiter cloud. You know, we're a relay backwards and forwards to the Earth. You know, we protect all of Earth's data. We protect all of Mars's data. We have backups all the way through. And the entire solar system becomes a living, breathing network. I mean, the moon right now is just a node on Earth's network. That's all it is. You know, we've got to get away from this. Oh, it's the moon. Yes, it's the moon. But as I always say, it's Earth's largest satellite. It's just satellite communications. Go explore the moon. Loads of companies doing that, amazing things. And just like the early days of satellite, we're like, guys, you guys go explore. Love what you're doing. Love it. We're just going to sit here on the lander and run our electronics with our dish pointing back and make some money.
So 5 years from now, we're organizing another webinar with you. And at that point, hopefully you're going to become a public company, or you're going to be doing your SPAC. You become a successful venture. How would you describe the business that you're doing 5 years from now?
I would look at that and say, still more to come. You know, 5 years from now, we want to be putting some amazing equipment up on the lunar surface, churning out revenue in the nicest possible way, meeting our customer demands. And I want to be able to come back and say, we're profitable. Shareholders, thank you. We're going to, we don't want to go off and do our exabyte level facility now. And we need that capital. Right, let's do it. Let's make this the moon's first unicorn is what we want to do. And those who know me know that I don't often get this excited about things, that I only ever do what I only ever talk about what I can actually do. I talk the talk, walk the walk. That's what I was taught at McDonnell Douglas, working at Kennedy, and in Lockheed and Boeing and all these great companies, right? You always fulfill your promises. And I would look at the next 5 years as just eye-popping. Now, you know, good luck to all the people we're riding with, because we have to ride with them, right? But yes, as soon as the more equipment we can get up there, the more business we can do and the more good we can do. And oh, absolutely. I want off. We've already got on the designing, on the drawing board. We've already got our exabyte level facilities on the drawing boards. And we want to go to zettabyte. And people go, Chris, but I'm like, hey, look, since we've been talking, the human race today alone has created 2.5 quintillion bytes of information. Right? This year, we're on track for over 50 exabytes as a species. What? Remember the old days when we used to plug in a thumb drive and it was 2 megabytes? I'm like, ooh. And then someone showed up with one that was like 64 megas. I'm like, oh my gosh. We just saw a hard drive that had 100 terabytes on it. We're like, what? And then go, and the people we're talking to, they're like, oh yeah, but that stuff, we're going much bigger than that. And that's the thing. Data, data, data. It is now the engine of our global economy. And it's our job to protect it.
Chris, we definitely share your enthusiasm, and we cannot wait to see like all the great things that you're going to be doing for our planet and in other worlds. Thanks so much, Chris Scott.
No, well, thank you. Thank you. And sorry I was late coming on. You know, everyone who does know me is like, oh my gosh, he's never late. And I'm like sitting here frantically trying to get on. No, but thank you for having me. Apologies for being late, everybody. And I'm happy to talk. And by the way, we're finally out of stealth, so we can have this conversation. Sidney and I and Stephen over at Seldor, we've been talking about this for so long. And we're like, oh, but finally, Lonestar, we're out. And we can have conversations. And it's already picked up our customer leads. Love it.
Thanks so much, Chris. And I really appreciate it. And so we're very proud to have Chris as the inaugural speaker in our Seldor investment series. We'll be back next week with Affilion, another portfolio company, and that is doing some great things to also contribute to sustainable development and using sustainable fuels and propulsions that will make the industry much more environmentally friendly. Thanks so much, everyone, and see you next week.